Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I am welcoming back to our airwaves Carolyn Fiddler. She writes This Week in State House Action. It is on Substack. You can find her on all the socials. And it is a really interesting little take she has on state elections. You know, we all pay attention to Congress and who's running, for Senate and sometimes even governor, not quite as much. But the people who really affect the way you live your life on a day-to-day basis are the people that you vote into the State House. Carolyn, thanks for being here.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be back.
It is delightful. Now, I'm just as guilty as what I just said about paying attention to the really high-profile races and not looking at the lesser races as much as I would like to. You wrote about the recent primary elections in Michigan, and you focused on a number of the state house races and what was at stake. Can you walk us through that and tell us who won and who didn't and what it might mean?
Yeah, I'd be absolutely delighted. I know there was a lot of discussion last week around the U.S. Senate primary in Michigan, which is obviously very important as well. And that was a squeaker that was really, really interesting. But another important set of races that are happening this fall are for the Michigan state legislature. Democrats want to flip that state house back to majority control, and Democrats want to make sure they ideally expand their majority in the state Senate, which is very, very, very narrow. And so last week's primaries were setting all of that up for the fall. And there were some interesting like Dem on Dem action in safe blue seats. And there was some really interesting action in some of the swingier seats in the legislature that are actually going to determine who is in charge after November.
And so what's the takeaway? What's the big picture here?
I would say the takeaway is that, we saw this up ballot too. There's a lot of good unity after these contentious primaries. Even the ones down ballot got pretty spicy in some places. But everyone came together afterwards, and everyone is very clear-eyed about what needs to be done to make sure that Democrats are able to expand their power in the state legislature in November. There was one race that became almost like a weird sort of AIPAC / Michigan state utility company proxy fight. The utility companies are certainly a little anxious about all this discussion about affordability, because it turns out there are a lot of, depending on the state, there are things that state lawmakers can do to help keep prices down or even reduce prices in terms of what people are paying for their electricity, which everyone is very understandably worried about these days. Just like many other states, Michigan is wrestling with data centers and how many of those to allow and what that needs to look like to keep the environment safe and to keep people from paying too much for electricity and water and all of that. And there were also some really interesting contests to give us some Republican candidates in very swing seats. I would say that one of the candidates that came out of the Republican primary to run in probably the state's most Republican seat in the state Senate that's currently held by a Democrat. The Republicans did not get their strongest candidate out of that. So it's entirely possible that that Democrats are well poised to keep that majority in the state Senate this fall because of outcomes like that. We'll see. I'm sure they, being Republicans, are going to throw a lot of money on flipping the state Senate and keeping their control of the state House. So there's, fewer than 90 days left between now and election day.
I believe it's 83, but who's counting?
I know. I'm trying to keep it to round numbers in my head because that's less scary to me than 83.
Carolyn, you mentioned AIPAC. In Illinois, perhaps surprisingly, AIPAC was a negative for a lot of candidates. A lot of the candidates who took AIPAC money were denigrated for doing that, and many of them lost. How would you say that is? Would you say that's reflective of the rest of the country, or were we an anomaly?
I don't think that Illinois was an anomaly, but I also that doesn't mean that played out the exact same way everywhere. There was one primary that AIPAC did kind of wade into in a lower key way. AIPAC is not as invested in state politics as some other groups. They're certainly invested in national politics, but there was that kind of interplay of those issues and like who is getting large sums of money from what kind of groups. And there was a candidate in a primary that was supported by donors who also tend to support AIPAC. And he was also supported by a PAC that was funded by one of the state utilities. And he came out ahead. So that's going to mean really, and it's a safely blue district. So he's going to get elected. He's going to become a member of the state house and I'm sorry, the state senate. And and so it's gonna be really interesting to see how that plays within the caucus after November, after everyone's inaugurated for session next year, and see how that fits into Democrats, affordability priorities and keeping rates down for folks in Michigan, because Democrats are certainly very mindful of that. And there was one more like kind of interesting primary in Michigan, if I can
Sure. You have the floor.
Out like a little bit longer about Michigan primaries. So there was this one state house race where this guy named Frank Liberati was running to fill his brother's state house seat. His brother's retiring. But his brother being a Democrat, sorry, these are all Democrats, his brother cast I think, a lousy vote about banning trans girls from kids' sports. So that's riled up a lot of Democrats. And it's not a super blue district, but it's certainly a Dem leaning district for sure. So this remarkable transgender woman stepped up to run, Joanna Whaley, and she was motivated by this vote this guy took to run. But this guy, Mr. Liberati, his brother, who was running to try and keep the seat in the family, within the family, so to speak, filed a complaint against Joanna Whaley, alleging that she should be disqualified from the ballot, basically because she didn't include her dead name on her campaign filing, her paperwork to run for office. So that was kind of, lousy. He lost the complaint. The complaint was completely thrown out. Joanna remained on the ballot, and she won that primary handily last week. So that was nice to see. And
That's always nice to hear.
Yeah, and it's very likely. Again, the seat is not a gimme, but it's definitely a lean Dem seat, and so it's very likely that Michigan will have its first transgender woman legislator next year. Hopefully.
Very cool. Very interesting.
No, she's remarkable and has a tremendous story. She was a megachurch pastor for a long time.
Wow.
Yeah, she's absolutely been through it. So,
wow. Interesting. Yeah. Tomorrow you're probably aware of this. Tomorrow, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Alabama, Vermont, and Connecticut are all holding primaries. Anything that you think we should be particularly paying attention to there?
Well, I'm really, really excited about the Wisconsin legislature this fall. Democrats have a chance to, for the first time in, we're talking at least 16 years now, to win majorities in the state assembly and in the state senate. Half of the state senate is up. Democrats made inroads 2 years ago when the other half of the state senate was up. So they were hoping to continue to make inroads towards a majority in that state senate, and they're also hoping to flip the state assembly to Democratic control. This is a real deep cut. A few years back, there was this big state Supreme Court case about redistricting. Republicans gerrymandered the crap out of that state, and the state Supreme Court said, actually, this violates the state constitution. You can't do that. You have to draw your districts in a way that sucks less. And so they did. The maps are they're certainly not friendly towards Democrats necessarily, but they're the least hostile maps that Democrats have had in Wisconsin since 2010. So that is the big push for this fall in Wisconsin. Of course, there's a governor's race. The attorney general there is running for re-election. He's great, Josh Kaul, we're all very excited to see Democrats succeed at every level of the ballot in Wisconsin.
Okie dokie. We've made copious notes of what you've just said, and it will guide us over the next couple of days. Carolyn, we need to take a break, but when we come back, another one of your posts, and I'm sorry I don't have the date when this one aired, but you talked about what could potentially happen, the challenges that we could potentially face in the midterms and Trump's attempt to steal them. I want to talk more about that when we come back from a break. I'm talking to Carolyn Fiddler. This week in State House Action. You should be reading it. We'll be back after this.
Don't turn that dial.
A dangerous mistake to make.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, returns right now on WCPT 820.
Carolyn Fiddler has a newsletter, This Week in State House Action. You can find it everywhere. I like to read it on Substack, but she is also on most of the socials as well. And Carolyn, recently you posted something about how Trump might steal the midterms. I shared last week a sound clip from Congressman Jim Himes, who was on one of the cable network shows and talking about, they were asking him about, the voter suppression and all this other stuff. And he said, here's the scenario that I think is most likely. The vote takes place. The vote takes place, and we're starting to get the returns, and suddenly we see Jon Ossoff has won, and it looks like, the Democrats definitely have the House. Maybe it looks like they might be making some inroads in the Senate. And then Donald Trump goes on television and claims that someone, whether one of the suggestions was it was Maduro's brother, comes out and says, well, we're Venezuela, and we can tell you right now, we interfered with those voting machines. We're telling you right now, this is not a free and fair election. And that then would then use that to say we got to throw all these results out. It clearly was not a free and fair election. Jim Himes said that, I think, is a much more likely scenario than some of the other things, like having ICE show up at polling places. And he said that he believes that last speech Trump gave, where he was mad that all the networks didn't cover it in full, that he was laying the groundwork for that. Like, we know that there's foreign actors invading our election system, and that's what he's going to do after the fact, especially. He apparently has a real bug up his butt about Jon Ossoff. And if this all looks like it's going the Democrats' way, then he's going to step in and say, oh, I've got proof it's phony baloney, and we have to just negate this. What do you think is the most likely way that he will mess with the midterms? Because we all know he's going to do something, and maybe more than one something.
Yeah, no, I wish you were being alarmist, but you absolutely are not being alarmist at all. He is absolutely planning he's already low-key messing with the midterms. He is planning to increase the number of ways in which he will be messing with the midterms. I think we're going to see some real creativity, like the bad kind, in terms of the things he is going to, pull out of his butt to do to try and discredit election results. I think that Himes' theory is absolutely colorable. I don't think anything, I'm not sure really anything is off the table here. I think that if there is some sort of federal lever of power that he can pull to just set some things on fire, he's absolutely going to do it, because he is terrified of being held accountable. And he understands that Americans and members of Congress and other folks are really tired of seeing him get away with everything he's getting away with, because obviously Republicans in Congress are doing jack. So he is going to do things that pretty much, I think he might do anything we can imagine. And I think he's going to do some things that we might not even be able to imagine. But the thing is, I hope that I need folks to know that, first of all, American elections, your elections in your state and elections everywhere, are incredibly secure. They're incredibly safe and secure. Everyone's ballot is going to count. That I think I love that Jim Himes is worried about this, and he is correct to be raising the alarm about it 100%. But I also think it's incumbent upon him and other members of Congress and pretty much anyone with a bully pulpit to remind Americans that no matter what Donald Trump says, our elections are safe and secure. And anything to mess with that is going to be Trump's doing and no one else's. Trump is the one trying to make our elections not safe and not secure, because they absolutely are right now. Our elections are incredibly well run and incredibly secure, and Trump is the one who's putting that in danger.
I don't know if state officials were shocked and surprised, but I was shocked and surprised when Tulsi Gabbard and the FBI showed up in Georgia and started taking election materials.
Yeah.
And if that is the way Trump wants to say the midterms were crooked, they were invalid, if the FBI shows up at state boards of election, can governors just say, no, go away, you're not allowed here? How do we fight that? Because I know attorneys general are getting ready and that they sort of pre-write a lot of motions. If they think the administration is going to do something, they already figure out how they can counter it. They write it up so if it happens, they can be in court within hours instead of within days. But I don't know how you would fight if the FBI shows up.
That is a dicey thing, especially in a state like Georgia, where there are no statewide Democratic elected officials at this point who would have any influence over this process. We do know that not every statewide Republican in Georgia buys into the big lie, buys into Trump's trash. So I think there is a bit of a backstop there. I think that Republicans in Georgia want to win elections and won't want all their ballots stolen and thrown out and things like that, because they have races to win there too. It's not just about the U.S. Senate race. So there are some built-in backstops that I hope will help people sleep a little bit better at night. But attorneys general everywhere are super focused on making sure that they are ready to counteract as quickly as humanly possible all of the antics that Trump is going to pull. And again, I think it is impossible to be too alarmist about this.
I agree with you 100%. And I think if Trump just goes on TV and says, oh, my friends in Venezuela are admitting that they hacked the voting machines, and if he just goes on television and says something, I don't think we're in too much of a crisis, because I'm pretty sure that nobody believes what he says. Even his followers are kind of starting to wonder if what he says is right. But if he sends out the FBI, and under Kash Patel, Kash Patel, like Todd Blanche, yes, sir. How high shall I jump, sir? Shall I jump again, sir? Is just going to do it. And I think that is, do you call out the National Guard? Do they go to war with the FBI? I mean, how does that happen? What, do you just lock up the doors and hope that they don't break down the door? I don't know how you fight what once was a respected government agency.
Yeah, no, having the FBI roll up and just steal ballots would be seen as just stealing ballots. And I think that, and I know that, again, I know there are a lot of complaints among progressives about the media. And I do think the media has not been as effective as they need to have been about calling out Trump when he lies about things. But I think that it's incumbent upon, again, anyone with a bully pulpit to push the media to not both sides the crazy things that Trump is saying and is going to say about elections. His claims will be just things he makes up, demonstrably not true things. And it is very important that when this stuff is getting covered by the media, that the media says, hey, Trump said this. There's nothing that shows that this is the case. This is a thing that Trump has said, but there's nothing to back it up. And in terms of who's versus the FBI rolling in to steal ballots. I think that the Georgia Board of Elections, there is a Democrat still on that body, thankfully. In fact, I know her. She's amazing and she's very smart. But she is getting ready. She is thinking about what she can do to help physically keep ballots safe from getting stolen. These attorneys general are already like queued up these motions and these show causes and lawsuits to make sure that these ballots aren't absconded with and suddenly mysteriously disappear. Again, because our elections are safe and secure, and Trump is the one who is trying to make them not that. We're in for a really interesting November, I think, and not in a fun way.
Sure.
Except for insofar as I do believe Democrats are going to perform pretty strongly this November.
I think so too. And real quick, because we only have like a minute left, in your post about the midterms, you have a link to Power the Polls. Real quick, tell people about that.
One of the greatest things that you can do, just as a human being out there in the world, to get involved in your local elections process, to not just to help these people out and be civic duty awesome, but also to like make yourself feel better about how your own elections are run, to raise your own awareness, is to go to powerthepolls.com. And that website will connect you to your local registrar, your local polling place and polling staff and your local election staff, and you can get plugged in with them and locally, be a poll worker, be a poll watcher. It's a great way to get started and get involved in this process, because one thing that elected officials always they need more folks out there to help them with the work of administering elections. We want billions and billions. We want as many people to vote as possible, obviously, and it takes resources including people to help facilitate that. So if folks want to get involved and are able to help out on election day or in early voting in your state, if that's available, check out powerthepolls.com. It's a great way to get plugged in. Another way to plug in is to connect with a local campaign or your state party. They're going to have volunteering opportunities for you as well. There are many ways to get involved.
And another way to plug in is to sign up for This Week in State House Action, the newsletter that will keep you up to speed on everything you need to know what's going on in the states. Carolyn, thank you so much for being here. It is always a pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy coming.